Now, let me carry this on. Now, you see these dark spaces right here? Those dark spaces are where the electron is not to be found. It's never here. So what this is set up is a possibility of it being here, of it being here, of it being here, but not along this line. So that if we go to the very end of all things, we're not going to ever find an electron out here. It's going to be anywhere, but not where these dark lines were. And when we find an electron, we don't find a cloud of electrons. What we find is a single dot appearing somewhere. Let me show you an actual experiment that was actually done to show you this. Now, let me explain something about this, what's really weird about this. If we think of an electron as a particle which travels from here to there, like a particle, like a ball or a coin or an object, and it comes to two slits, it should either go through one or the other. But what I'm telling you is that it doesn't travel that way. It goes into the possibility world and it splits apart into all the possibilities that are open to it. It can't help doing that because it's made of possibility. Now, once it does that, once it goes into all these different possibilities, it will stay there unless something happens. And this is where you come into the picture. Not only do you put in boundaries to affect the reality that you're in, you also do something else. You know what that something else is? It's called observation in physics. You look, you experience, you have aha, or I understand, I don't understand. You have an experience, something happens and there's a pop. And when that pop happens, the electron, or whatever the cloud we're talking about, is no longer in cloud form. It suddenly condenses itself down to particleness. Now, if you keep observing things very often, they stay particleness for as long as they're observed that way. So there's a certain stability which arises from that. So let me show you what the actual experiment, what it actually looks like. You can get it to come up here. Here we go. Okay. We're looking at a detector plane. And you see those spots that are popping up right there? Those are single electrons. Somebody's actually observing those. And this is a film of what was being observed. Now, these electrons are being fired at random. They're only one at a time. Pop, 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 pop. There's no chance there'd be more than one in the microscope at any time. They're very small, and they're pop, 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 pop. And they're only being detected one by one as particles. So we conclude that each one is passed at random into this two-slit device. Okay? So we would expect that it would just be a random dot pattern, and that's what we should see at the end of all this. But as the pattern begins to build up, something of the cloud begins to show up. And if you look, you can see it forming right now. You can see something happening which is called striations. Remember I told you those dark lines where the electron doesn't go? Here you can see what they actually look like. You see these dark lines here? Now, this is not a random pattern anymore. There's an interference going on there. This is what your mind is doing all of the time. Your mind is affecting the reality you call real. There is no out there, until there's an in here operating. And it operates this way. So, now that we've seen that once, how can one electron be in so many different places at the same time? Well, that's how your mind works. It has to, in order for you to become aware of new possibilities. Now here's Yogi Berra, and he wrote a book. He said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And now that you've had some quantum physics, you can begin to understand what he's talking about. Yogi also said, you got to be careful if you don't know where you're going, because you may not get there. One of my favorite Yogi Berra stories goes something like this. One time he was in conversation with two umpires, and one of the umpires was a very rigid type of guy who believed there was a real reality and everything else was just the fiction of deluded minds. And he was an umpire, and he would sit behind the plate, and when the pitcher threw the ball, he would call it a ball or a strike. Okay, that's something, every umpire does that. And Yogi was hearing these two umpires conversing. The second umpire, by the way, does the same thing, but had a whole different outlook on life. And Yogi was joining in the conversation. He said, Yogi, we're going to talk about umping for a moment. We want you to join in and listen in, and I want to get your opinion, what you think, what is going on here. So the first umpire says, first of all, I know what I'm talking about. I'm an expert. When it's a ball, it's a ball. When it's a strike, it's a ball. It's a strike. When I calls it as they are. I calls them as they are. Balls are called balls. Strikes are called strikes. And that's it. That's it. That's it. The second umpire says, well, every once in a while I make an error. I can miss a call. I may call a strike a ball or a ball strike. I'm only human, right? And they turn to Yogi. He says, what are you, Yogi? How would you? How do you think about this? And he thinks a while. He says, they ain't nothing until I calls them. Therein lies the power of you. When you call something into being, when you bring something into the world, when you see something by giving it a name, you bring it into your reality. And if you get another person to vote on it, it becomes real. Now, I'm going to do something with you right now. I'm going to teach you an act of magic. I'm going to show you how to do something magical with your own mind. You're not going to believe. I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. You see that object up there? You're going to make it disappear right in front of your eyes. You're not going to see it. And you're not going to close your eyes. I'm not going to change the slide. Well, at first I'm going to show you how to do this, so you'll allow me to change the slide while I do that. But once I get it up there, you're going to do it yourself. You're going to make that object completely vanish right before your eyes, just by changing your thought processes. Do you believe that? You guys are gullible, aren't you? How many think that's total nonsense? It's impossible. Tell me if it's total nonsense. It can't be done. I know what I see. First umpire, right? Okay, I'm telling you, there ain't nothing till you calls them. So we're going to learn how to call and make something out of nothing, or nothing from something, or whatever we're going to do. So I want you to look at this object for a while, and I want you to tell me right now, in your mind at least, what you see up there. What would you call that object? A cube? A box? Can we agree to call it a cube for a while? A cube, okay? All right, good. Now that we see the cube, I'm now going to ask you to look at it. And I'm going to point out to you with my little arrow. You see this strut along this bar right here? And you see this one over here? And this one over here? And then this one over here. You see those four struts? They outline a square, do they not?